We were taught that precise mechanisms and complex calculations are achievements of the 19th century, and that everything before that was just primitive manual labor. But what if I told you that deep within the Earth there is evidence to the contrary? Computers that are 2,000 years old stainless steel from ancient times, and maps where Antarctica is shown without ice. These artifacts are not just strange, they are officially recognized, but at the same time absolutely impossible from the point of view of textbooks. How did technologies of the future end up in the distant past? And why does history stubbornly ignore these facts? Today we will examine discoveries that were ahead of their time. Hello my friend, you're on the Kurtop channel. The year is 1900 Greece, the sea. In April 1900, a group of Greek sponge divers was working near the island of Antikythera when a storm forced them to drop anchor near some underwater rocks. During one of the dives, the diver Elias Stadiatis surfaced in a panic and reported that there were dead people lying all over the seafloor. It was later discovered that these were bronze statues lying next to the wreckage of a Roman merchant ship that had sunk around the 60s or 70s before Christ. Excavations continued until 1901, and among the amphorae, coins, and sculptures, a corroded bronze fragment was recovered, which at the time did not seem interesting, and was sent to the museum as an ordinary piece of debris. It was only in 1902 that archaeologist Valerio Stace noticed a gear inside the fragment, something that should not have been present in any ancient artifact. Further research showed that there were at least 37 gears with precise geometry inside, assembled into a complex system of transmissions. In 1951, physicist Derek de Sola Price conducted an X-ray study of the mechanism and proved that the device was used to calculate the movements of the sun, moon, and planets, as well as to predict eclipses. According to the 19-year Metonic cycle in 2005, tomography confirmed the presence of scales, inscriptions, and complex mathematical relationships that would have been impossible for artisanal production. The mechanism is over 2,000 years old, and in terms of precision, it matches 16th century engineering rather than that of antiquity. And this is the first recorded find that has been officially recognized and studied. And at the same time, it doesn't fit into its era at all, because after it, nothing similar appears in history for another 1,500 years. 1936 Iraq, Baghdad. In 1936, during excavations near Baghdad, archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig discovered strange ceramic vessels about 14 centimeters tall, inside of which were copper cylinders and iron rods insulated with bitumen. These objects were found in layers dated to approximately the 1st and 3rd centuries AD, during the Parthian Empire, and they did not resemble any vessels, tools, or ritual objects known to archaeology from that period. When Koenig described the find, he drew attention to one detail that could not be explained by chance. If you fill the vessel with an acidic solution, an electric voltage arises between the iron and the copper. The simplest reconstruction produced between 0.5 and 1 volt exactly as much as a galvanic cell generates. In the 1940s, German and American researchers repeated the experiment and got the same result, confirming that the design really works as a battery. The official explanation was simple. These could have been vessels for storing scrolls or ritual objects. But the problem is that the bitumen insulation, metal electrodes, and the way it's assembled make no sense in a ritual or everyday context. But they perfectly match the principle of a galvanic cell, which was only discovered by Alessandro Volta in 1800. Moreover, traces of electrochemical gilding have been found on the surface of some metal objects from the same region, which is impossible to do without a source of electricity. These vessels are officially kept in museums, described in catalogs, and recognized as authentic, but their purpose is still unknown. Simple explanations disrupt the typical pattern of technological development. If people in the 1st century AD used electricity, even in its simplest form, then a question arises that history prefers to avoid. Where did this knowledge disappear to? And why was there no further development, no traces, and no continuation after it? Year 415, India, Delhi. In the center of Delhi stands an iron pillar over 7 meters tall and weighing about 6 tons. It was erected around the year 415 AD during the reign of Emperor Chandragupta II. It has been standing in the open air for more than 1,500 years. It has survived monsoons, heat, dust storms, and the passing of dozens of eras. But despite that, it is almost not covered with rust, even though it is made not of stainless steel, but of pure iron. Analysis of the metal showed that the column contains a high percentage of phosphorus and almost no sulfur or manganese, which creates a protective film that prevents corrosion. But modern industrial metallurgy has only been able to partially replicate this effect so far. Moreover, the column was not cast, but forged from many pieces of iron welded into a single monolith, which requires precise temperature control and impact processing, impossible without an advanced technological tradition. According to the official version, in the 4th-5th centuries, iron was produced in small furnaces suitable for simple tools and weapons, but not for creating 6-ton structures resistant to corrosion, for 1,500 years. Nevertheless, the column stands, its composition has been studied, its date confirmed, and it is not a legend or a disputed artifact, but a recognized monument that you can touch with your own hands. The strangest part begins next. The technology that enabled this metal's creation was neither advanced nor scaled up. In India, there is no series of similar columns, no metallurgical school emerges, and there are no recorded transitional forms or attempts to repeat the success. It's as if the knowledge appeared at a single point, was used once and then disappeared, leaving behind an object that fits neither the technological level of the era nor the logic of its development. And this is already the 3rd consecutive case where technology appears ahead of its time and disappears without a trace, leaving behind neither a line of progress, nor a chain of development, nor an explanation that could close the question. The 1st century before Christ Rome. In the 1st century before Christ, the Romans began to build things that modern engineering still studies with amazement and frustration. Because these structures have survived earthquakes, floods, and 2,000 years of erosion, while their modern counterparts fall apart in just a few decades. We're talking about Roman concrete, a material that was used for ports, breakwaters, domes, aqueducts, and massive public buildings, many of which are still standing and functional today. Unlike modern concrete, the Roman mixture contained volcanic ash, lime, and seawater. And it was this combination that triggered chemical processes which over time didn't destroy the material, but actually made it stronger. In 2017, researchers at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology confirmed that crystals of tobermorite and phillipsite form in the structure of ancient concrete, filling micro cracks and preventing further destruction, creating a self-healing effect that most modern mixtures can't achieve. The problem is that after the fall of the Roman Empire, the recipe for this concrete disappeared completely. Medieval builders no longer used this technology, ports were destroyed, domes collapsed, and concrete was reinvented only in the 19th century, but without the ability to self-heal. There is no technological continuity between Roman ports, which have stood for 2,000 years, and modern embankments, which are designed to last 50 to 70 years. It's as if the knowledge was lost entirely, not just gradually forgotten. Archaeological and chemical analyses confirm the composition and age of Roman concrete, and its properties are officially recognized. But it's impossible to explain why such a technology disappeared for 1,500 years without acknowledging that the technical level of the ancient world was higher than is commonly believed. This is another case where knowledge doesn't evolve but is interrupted, leaving behind a trace that we still can't fully replicate despite modern science and industry. 1999 Germany, Nebra. In July 1999, 2 illegal diggers with metal detectors found, on the Mittelberg Hill near the town of Nebra, a bronze disc about 32 centimeters in diameter, covered with green patina and gold inlays in the form of the sun, moon, and stars. Bronze swords, axes, and bracelets were also found, enabling archaeologists to accurately date the discovery. Around 1600 before Christ, the Bronze Age, a time when, according to textbooks, people did not possess systematic astronomical knowledge. Further analysis showed that the disk depicts not just stars, but specific celestial cycles. A group of researchers found that the dots correspond to the Pleiades, by whose position the beginning of agricultural seasons was determined, and the arcs on the edges of the disk indicate the points of sunrise and sunset on the solstices. The angle between them is exactly 82 degrees, a value that matches the actual angle of the sun's path for the latitude of Central Europe. This disk enabled synchronization of lunar and solar calendars, a process needing complex observations and calculations. The problem is that such knowledge officially appeared in Europe only 1,000 years later in ancient Greece, then disappeared again and returned only during the Renaissance, in the Bronze Age of Central Europe. There are no records of observatories, texts, or traditions that could explain the existence of such an instrument. The Nebra disk is officially recognized as authentic, kept in a museum, and its dating has been confirmed by independent laboratories, but its appearance remains unexplained because it is a precise astronomical instrument from an era where, according to the accepted version of history, such instruments could not have existed. 2600 before Christ, Egypt, Saqqara. In Saqqara, in a necropolis dating back to the 26th century before Christ, there are 24 granite sarcophagi, each carved from a single block of Aswan granite and weighing from 70 to 100 tons. These sarcophagi are located in the underground galleries of the Serapeum at a depth of more than 10 meters and were discovered in 1851 by the French archaeologist Auguste Mariette. Their inner surfaces are polished to a mirror finish with a tolerance of less than 0.01 mm, which matches the precision of modern computer numerical control machines. Aswan granite has a hardness of 6 to 7 on the Mohs scale, and even today, working with it requires diamond tools, cooling, and constant pressure. However, the official version claims that the Egyptians used copper saws, sand, and manual labor. In 1995, engineer Christopher Dang conducted measurements of the sarcophagi and showed that the inner corners have a perfect 90-degree geometry, and the surfaces do not have the waviness that would be inevitable. With manual processing, such parameters are impossible without machine rotation and a stabilized tool. The strangest thing is that the sarcophagi were not used. Lids weighing up to 30 tons were moved, but inside no mummies, inscriptions, or ritual traces were found, which completely contradicts the purpose of tombs. These objects do not fit into either the religious practices or the technological capabilities of the Old Kingdom, and to this day there is no explanation as to how. They were carved, transported from Aswan over 800 kilometers, and installed in narrow underground corridors with a clearance of just a few centimeters. And this is not an isolated case. In Giza, in the so-called Granite Temple, there are blocks weighing up to 200 tons fitted together without mortar, with gaps of less than a millimeter. Surface analysis shows traces of high-speed cutting, which do not match the tools known from the 3rd millennium before Christ. Egypt has been officially documented, dated, studied, and described, but there are still too many objects that look like traces of another technological culture that existed long before the pharaohs and disappeared without a trace. 1513, a map that shouldn't exist. In 1513, Ottoman Admiral Piri Reis created a map of the world, using, as he himself noted in a footnote, no fewer than 20 ancient sources, some of which were very old and of unknown origin. This map was only discovered in 1929 in the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul, and immediately after its publication it raised an issue that still hasn't been resolved. The map accurately depicts the coastline of South America, including Brazil, with correct proportions, angles, and outlines, confirmed by satellite imagery of the 20th century. But the strangest thing is that in the lower part of the map there is a continent whose shape matches Antarctica, and it's shown without its ice cover. Geological studies conducted in 1915 by United States and Soviet expeditions showed that the coastline of Antarctica without ice existed no later than 6,000 years ago, and possibly even earlier. In 1956, Colonel Harold Ohlmeyer of the United States Air Force submitted an official Air Force report stating that the Piri Reis map contains data that could not have been obtained in the 16th century, including an exact match of the latest relief of Antarctica, confirmed by seismic surveys only in 1949 during Operation High Jump. To create such a map, either aerial photography, a global geodetic system, or sources created before the continent's glaciation would be necessary. Piri Reis was not the only one. The 1,531 maps of Orontius and Orontius Phineus and the 1569 map of Mercator show the same outlines of the southern continent, with a 95% match of the coastlines when overlaid on modern geological models. But official history claims that Antarctica was only discovered in 1820, and before that, humanity had neither the technical capability nor the geographical knowledge for such cartographic constructions. If these maps are accurate, it means that someone mapped the Earth long before the age of sails, the compass, and longitude. And if these sources existed, it means that geographical knowledge was completely lost, because after the 16th century, such maps were no longer created, and humanity was rediscovering a world that had already once been measured. 750th year before Christ. Assyria, Nimrud. In 1850, in the ruins of the Assyrian city of Nimrud, British archaeologist Austin Henry Laird discovered a small crystal object, about 4 centimeters in diameter, carved from rock crystal. The object was found in layers dating back to the 8th century before Christ, and for a long time was considered an ornament or a decorative detail. But laboratory analysis revealed that it was a lens with a focal length of about 12 centimeters and an optical magnification of up to 3 times. Today it is known as the Nimrud lens and is kept in the British Museum under inventory number 91,110. Optical tests conducted in the 20th century showed that the lens was not accidental. It has an spherical shape that reduces distortions and allows light to be focused on a specific point, making it suitable not only for magnification, but also for working with small objects. In the 1970s, researchers at the British Museum confirmed that the lens could be used for engraving, precise carving, and even for observing celestial bodies when properly assembled into a system. The problem is that officially optics as a technology only appeared in the 13th century, and the first telescopes were created at the beginning of the 17th century. Previously, history shows humanity lacked both lens theory and the skill to make them. But the Assyrian lens exists. It is polished, has precise geometry, and was made not as a random stone but as a tool. Moreover, in the same region, micro engravings are found on seals and ornaments, with lines less than 0.1 millimeters thick, which is impossible to do without magnification. If optical instruments existed in the 18th century before Christ, it means that craftsmen of that time could work with a precision unavailable to the naked eye. And this automatically casts doubt on the explanation of many ancient technologies as primitive. But after Nimrud, optics completely disappeared and reappeared only 1,500 years later in another civilization and without any connection to the Assyrian tradition. 200 before Christ, 500 AD with microscopes. In the museums of Colombia, Peru, and Ecuador, there are gold artifacts whose sizes are measured in millimeters and fractions of a millimeter, yet they are crafted with a precision unattainable by the naked eye. In the collections of the Gold Museum in Bogota, there are microspirals, wire less than 0.2 millimeters thick, and figurines made up of dozens of parts, joined together without any visible traces. Soldering dated approximately from 200 before Christ to 500 AD. Analysis showed that the gold contains traces of platinum, whose melting point exceeds 1,700 degrees, while ancient furnaces officially could not reach even 1,200. In the 1970s, metallurgists at the Smithsonian Institution determined that the items were not cast, but sintered under precise temperature control, which requires either a complex furnace or a multi-stage process unknown to pre-Columbian cultures. At the same time, a similar technology appeared in Europe only in the 18th century, when platinum was first processed industrially. But in America, it was used 1,500 years earlier. Without written sources and without traces of technological development, similar microtechnologies are found in the Old World. In Egypt and Mesopotamia, stone and gold beads less than a millimeter in diameter have been found, with perfectly even holes that show no signs of hand drilling. In India, In layers dating back to the first millennia before Christ, micro drillings with a constant pitch and smooth walls have been found, which no hand tool leaves even under a microscope. There are no signs of vibrations typical of handwork on them. The strangest thing is that these items are not unique experiments. They are found by the dozens and hundreds in different cultures and in different centuries, but the technology for making them does not develop, does not spread, and is not described. It simply exists in its finished form and then disappears, as if the craftsman who knew it vanished along with. The 5th and 1000th years of our era. Columbia, aerodynamics. Small gold figurines, ranging from 4 to 7 centimeters in length, are kept in museums in Colombia and the United States. They were found in the burial sites of the Tolima culture and are dated between the 5th and 1000th years of our era. Officially, they are considered to be images of birds or insects, but they have details that do not exist in nature. These objects have vertical tail fins, rigid, triangular wings that are physically fixed, a fuselage, and a shape that completely matches the aerodynamic design of an airplane, not a living creature. In 1994, German engineers Peter Belting and Konrad Lubers created enlarged models of these figurines, precisely maintaining their proportions, and equipped them with motors and radio control. The models took off, remained stable in the air, and performed controlled flight without any structural modifications. Later, similar tests were conducted in the United States where aerodynamic analysis showed that the shape of the wings generated lift that was impossible for flapping flight, but ideal for a glider or airplane. The problem is that vertical tail fins, symmetrical wing profiles, and stabilized fuselages only appeared in aviation at the beginning of the 20th century, after decades of experiments and mathematical calculations. Such shapes do not exist in nature, and they could not have been a random artistic invention, because random shapes do not fly. To create such a configuration, you need to understand the distribution of airflow and the center of gravity, and this knowledge was officially formed only after the works of Cayley and Lilienthal in the 19th century. The figurines are recognized as authentic, their metallurgical composition is confirmed, their dating is not in doubt, and they were found in closed archaeological contexts, but their shape still does not have a satisfactory explanation. If objects were created in pre-Columbian America that correspond to the principles of aerodynamics, it means that the understanding of flight existed long before aviation, and then disappeared completely, leaving no drawings, no descriptions, and no attempts at development. The 1st and 10th centuries AD, mechanisms that should not have existed in the 1st century AD. In Alexandria, engineer Heron described devices whose level of complexity would not appear in Europe for more than 1,000 years. In his treatises Pneumatics and Automata, he documents mechanisms with gear transmissions, valves, reverse motions, and programmable sequences of actions. His temples opened their doors by themselves, statues moved, and altars lit up without fire. All of this used pressure, steam, water, and transmissions, calculated with precision, requiring knowledge of mechanics and mathematics. These preserved texts date to the 1st century, and their authenticity is undisputed. But the problem is that such devices cannot be assembled without advanced production of standard parts, and according to the official version, the ancient world had neither machines nor tools for serial precision processing. Nevertheless, the described machines worked, and this is confirmed by reconstructions carried out in the 20th century by engineers from the Science Museum in London and the Institute for the History of Science in Athens. In China, in 1092, the scholar Su Sun built an astronomical clock over 12 meters tall, which used a chain drive, a water regulator, and a mechanical escapement, similar to those that would later appear in Europe. It was only in the 14th and 15th centuries that these clocks displayed the stars' movements, moon phases, and the time of day, with their description preserved in the Sun Dynasty's official chronicles after Su Sun's death. The mechanism was dismantled and the technology disappeared, leaving no continuation in the Arab world. In 1206, engineer Al-Jazari created mechanical automatons, clocks with programmable figures, and water pumps with a crankshaft mechanism, which would only appear in Europe 300 years later. His book of knowledge of ingenious mechanical devices contains drawings, dimensions, and instructions, But after him, the technology once again does not develop, and mechanical knowledge fades away until the Renaissance. In all these cases, the same thing happens. Complex mechanisms appear suddenly, work, are described, and then disappear from history, as if they were an exception rather than a beginning. There is no line of development between ancient automata, Chinese astronomical clocks, and Arab machines, although according to the logic of progress, there should be. And if these mechanisms really existed and worked, it means that the level of engineering knowledge in the past was higher than the official picture allows, and the disappearance of this knowledge was not accidental, but systemic. The year 775 A, strike that leaves a mark on the trees. In 2012, Japanese researcher Fusa Miyake discovered a strange thing in the annual rings of Japanese cedar, a sharp spike in carbon-14 that cannot be explained by climate or measurement error. This spike turned out to be global. It was confirmed in trees from Europe, America, Asia, and the Southern Hemisphere, and it occurred in the years 774-775 AD. Essentially, the planet received a short-term burst of radiation, most likely from an extremely powerful solar flare, which cannot be faked because it is recorded directly in the wood. In the years following the discovery of the 775 event, it was found that this was not an isolated case. A similar, though weaker spike in carbon-14 was recorded in the years 993-994, and another one around 90 before Christ. These events have been named the Miyake events, and their main significance is not that they are frightening, but that they provide archaeology with a tool that did not exist before. The ability to link an object not to a century, not to an era, but to a specific calendar year. In 2021, it was under this very marker of the year 993 that wooden samples from the settlement in Newfoundland made it possible to date the presence of Scandinavians in North America with a precise figure. The year 1021 is not approximately the 11th century, not plus or minus decades, but a specific year, because tree rings record Miyake events like a stamp. And then it's just a matter of counting the rings to the bark. After that, any story about inaccurate ancient dating starts to look different. It turns out that there are events on the planet that set absolute markers, and as soon as archaeology gets enough wood or organic material with annual rings, it can uncover the chronology down to the year. And this is dangerous for the usual picture of the past, because then many anomalies stop being debatable and turn into events with an exact date, after which you can't go back a couple of centuries to save a nice scheme. Ice cores are a global chronicle of catastrophes. There is another source that works as the planet's archive and also leaves no room for convenient explanations. These are the ice cores of Greenland and Antarctica. Kilometer-high columns of ice in which the atmosphere of the past is recorded layer by layer show spikes of sulfates, ash, and chemical markers from eruptions. And when the same event is recorded in several cores on different continents at once, the argument about it being a local problem ends. It was there that the crisis of the year 536 was reconstructed, when European and Eastern chronicles described a dim sun and a cold summer, and the ice cores showed a sharp increase in volcanic aerosols, not just once, but in a series. A similar pattern is repeated for the year 1257, when the eruption of Somalis left such a powerful mark in the chemistry of the ice that it is visible in several cores and in both hemispheres. Then come years of cooling and poor harvests recorded by chronicles and indirect demographic data. These ice markers are important for one reason. They show that humanity has experienced periods when the environment was not destroyed gradually, but abruptly. Such shocks occurred during time windows after which archaeology observes breaks, voids, and simplifications of technology. When, in the same period, global-scale climate shocks are dated, and at the same time cultural collapses, the disappearance of crafts, the fall of cities, and the breakdown of traditions are recorded. It becomes difficult to maintain the idea of steady linear progress because the planet itself periodically erased what had been accumulated, abrupt breaks in the layers. If you look at archaeological layers not by individual countries, but as a single chronology of the planet, a picture emerges that cannot be explained by wars, migrations, or decline in different parts of the world. At the same time, Cultural layers end abruptly, followed by emptiness, and then a new culture begins, as if the world was being restarted. Such an abrupt break was recorded around 2200 before Christ. In Mesopotamia, the Akkadian Empire disappears. In Egypt, the Old Kingdom ends. Cities become deserted, construction stops, and written sources come to an end. Analysis of ice cores in Greenland shows a sharp cooling and a drought that lasted for decades. And in the layers of the Middle East, a dusty horizon appears as a result of a global climate catastrophe. After this, the level of technology declines, stone and bronze working becomes simpler, and complex projects disappear. The second collapse occurs around 1200 before Christ, the so-called Bronze Age collapse. Within a single generation, Mycenae and the Hittite kingdom disappear. The cities of the Levant vanish. Mediterranean trade networks collapse, writing disappears, metallurgy becomes simpler, and palaces turn into ruins. In the layers of Turkey, Syria, Greece, and Israel, archaeologists record the same horizon of fires and destruction, all dated to the same period. After that, the world becomes technologically poorer, and many skills are lost for centuries. The next global collapse is recorded in 536 AD. The chronicles of Europe, China, and the Middle East describe the sun as dim, cold summers, famine, and epidemics. Modern research shows that during this time, a series of volcanic eruptions occurred, releasing so much ash into the atmosphere that the temperature on the planet dropped by 1.5 to 2 degrees. In the archaeological layers of this period, a gap appears again. Cities shrink, construction stops, complex crafts disappear, and the standard of living rolls back by centuries. And the final blow came in 1257 when the eruption of the Samalas volcano in Indonesia became the largest in the last 7,000 years. Its traces have been found in the glaciers of Greenland and Antarctica. In Europe and Asia, there was famine, mass mortality, and political collapse. It was after this period that many technologies recorded in the Arab world, China, and Europe disappeared or became simplified, and the knowledge accumulated over centuries seemed to be erased. In all these cases, the same scenario repeats: an advanced culture, a sudden collapse, technological voids, and a new, simpler system. This doesn't look like evolution, it looks like a reset, after which humanity starts from a lower point each time, rediscovering things it once already knew how to do. And if these collapses are truly global, then all the impossible discoveries we've seen before stop being the exceptions. They become fragments of worlds destroyed, not gradually, but all at once, leaving behind only traces that we now consider anomalies that don't match up in dates. In 2020, a group of researchers from Harvard and the University of Helsinki published a study showing that radiocarbon dating from 3000 to 1000 before Christ contains a systematic error by as much as 200 to 300 years. Due to fluctuations in solar activity, this means that many objects we consider to be younger may actually be significantly older. In 2018, the journal Nature published data on ice cores from Greenland, where sharp spikes in the concentration of beryllium-10 and carbon-14 were recorded, indicating catastrophic events that occurred around 2200, 1600, and 1200 before Christ. These dates exactly coincide with the moments of the collapse of civilizations, the disappearance of technologies, and the failures of cultural traditions around the world. And what about 2022? The analysis of sedimentary rocks conducted in China, Turkey, and South America showed synchronous layers of destruction caused by abrupt cooling and droughts that lasted not for decades, but for generations. These events are officially recognized, documented, and published, but they are never linked to the loss of knowledge, because then it would have to be admitted that technologies disappeared not by accident, but massively and synchronously. If you combine this data with what we have seen before, it becomes clear that technologies did not disappear one by one. They vanished in entire layers, and each time humanity started over, no longer knowing that it once knew more. And here a question arises that cannot be ignored. What if we are not living after the first civilization, but after the fifth or sixth, simply calling the past primitive because we do not remember who we used to be? If you enjoyed this video and would like me to dig even deeper, let me know in the comments below. Thank you for watching until the end.